Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a battle that literally forged an empire. We're talking about a single clash on a dusty plain in India that didn't just end one dynasty, it kicked off the explosive start of a whole new one. And really, the whole thing boils down to this one giant question that seems, well, impossible. How on earth did an army of just 15,000 men manage to defeat a force of over 40,000 soldiers, plus 1,000 war elephants? It just doesn't add up. I mean, just look at these numbers. On paper, this should have been a total blowout. The invader, Babur, was outnumbered almost 3-1. He was up against Sultan Ibrahim Lodi's absolutely massive army. The odds? They weren't just bad, they looked completely impossible. But, when you dig into the details, that's where the story gets really interesting. You start to see the cracks in Lodi's massive advantage. See, Babur's army was small, yeah, but he brought something new to the party: cannons and matchlock guns. Lodi, on the other hand, no artillery. But he had, get this, 1,000 war elephants, basically the tanks of the ancient world. And look at the tactics. Babur has this complex, multi-part plan, while Lodi's just going for a straightforward frontal assault. That difference right there, it's the whole ballgame. Okay, so the big question is, how did these two totally different armies even end up on the same battlefield? What brought them to Panipat on April 21st, 1526? Well, the story really starts a few years before the battle. Babur had actually lost his ancestral home, Samarkand, and he set his sights on a new prize, Hindustan. He wanted to reclaim the territory his famous ancestor, Timur, had once held in Punjab. And that ambition, it put him on a direct collision course with the biggest power in the region, the Delhi Sultanate. Now, this is super important. Babur wasn't just charging in blind. The Lodi Empire was basically crumbling from the inside out. The Sultan, Ibrahim Lodi, was apparently not a popular guy, and his kingdom was full of people who wanted him gone. It was so bad that Babur was actually invited to invade by some of the most powerful people in the land, including Lodi's own uncle. So he wasn't just an invader. He was walking right into a power vacuum. All right, so when you look at the battle itself, there's a really simple answer that jumps out at you. It feels almost modern, and it seems to explain everything. And it all comes down to one thing: gunpowder. Babur brought cannons and firearms, which was a total revolution in warfare at the time. Lodi's huge army, they had absolutely nothing to counter that kind of technology. It was a complete mismatch. Now, Lodi thought he had an ace up his sleeve, his ultimate weapon, and that was his force of nearly 1,000 war elephants. Can you just imagine the sheer terror of seeing that charging at you? For centuries, elephants were one of the most terrifying, devastating weapons you could face. But here's the twist. Babur's new tech completely flipped the script. It turned Lodi's greatest strength into his biggest nightmare. The sound of the cannons. The elephants had never heard anything like it. It terrified them. So they panicked, turned around, and stampeded right back through their own army, causing absolute chaos. So there you have it. Simple story, right? New technology beats old technology. Guns beat elephants. The cannons won the day. End of story. Well, not quite. That's not the whole story. When you look at what people wrote at the time, you find something fascinating. The guns were important, for sure, but the real game changer? It wasn't the weapon. It was the plan. It was how Babur used those weapons. So let's get into Babur's tactical genius, because this is the real key to his victory. He used two specific tactics that he'd actually learned from the Ottomans, and they completely outsmarted Ibrahim Lodi. Okay, so the first tactic was called the Tologama. Now, instead of just lining up his guys in a big block, he split his small army into a bunch of smaller, super mobile units. The whole idea was to use speed and flexibility to get around the sides of Lodi's massive, slow army and eventually surround them. The second piece of the puzzle was the Araba. This is brilliant. He took about 700 carts, tied them all together with rope, and basically created a defensive wall. But it was more than just a wall. It was a shield for his cannons and his gunmen, giving them a safe, stable place to fire from. It was like a mobile fortress he built right there on the battlefield. And here's how the two tactics worked together in perfect, deadly harmony. So Lodi's huge army charges forward, right? But they slam into the Araba, that fortress of carts, which funnels them into a narrow space and totally neutralizes their numbers advantage.
While Lodi's army is all bunched up and confused, bam, Babur unleashes his Tulugma units. They sweep around the sides and attack the now disorganized army from the flanks and the rear. All of a sudden, the bigger army is trapped, surrounded, and completely falling apart. It was just a masterclass in using defense, artillery, and cavalry all together.
And the result of this tactical genius? It wasn't just a win, it was a total annihilation that would literally reshape the map of India forever. The whole battle was over in just a few hours. In that short time, Ibrahim Lodi himself was killed, along with something like 20,000 of his men. Just incredible. And with that one single, devastating victory, the Lodi dynasty was over. The Delhi Sultanate, an empire that had been around for 300 years, was just gone. Wiped out in a single morning. And what rose from the ashes? Babur laid the foundation for something entirely new, the powerful Mughal Empire, a dynasty that will go on to rule the Indian subcontinent for the next 300 years. But here's a crazy thought. It was so close to not happening. One account from the time suggests that Babur's army was on its last legs, totally exhausted with no reinforcements left. If Lodi had just managed to hang on for another hour, the entire history of India might have been completely different. It was that close. And that really leaves us with this final thought. Panipat is just this incredible reminder that history isn't always written by the biggest army. Sometimes it's not about brute force. It's about the best idea. It's about innovation, superior strategy, and having the guts to pull off a plan that no one sees coming.